Ladies and gentlemen, I get a little volume on the mic. Can you hear me okay? Mubtaahij, who I think hope will give me the correct pronunciation on this horse. Am I pretty close there?
That is right.
Is that the pronunciation on him is fairly close? But Mike is here for the first time as a participant in the Kentucky Derby and as a participant in a race at Churchill Downs. As I'm sure he will tell you, he was here for the Breeders' Cup won by Tisnow, that big win over Giants Causeway in a Breeders' Cup here at Churchill, but never here to compete. And he's an interesting entrant in the Kentucky Derby. I don't know if we've ever had a more international horse. Mubtaahij, bred in Ireland, his trainer from South Africa, his owner from Dubai, and his jockey from Belgium. So that's a superfecta we have not seen. Is he from France?
He's bought in France, yeah.
Okay, so still works for me. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike to Kock. Welcome to Churchill Downs, and I'll just fire a couple of easy questions at you and then let these guys get you. First of all, how did the horse ship, and how are things going 4 days out from the Kentucky Derby?
John, he seems to have shipped very well. Although it was very cold in Chicago, he's kept his coat, and he seems in very good nick.
You decided very early on that this was a goal for your horse. Back in January, I think I read that you were talking about the Kentucky Derby. What was it about him that made you think, and you've had a lot of success when you've come to the U.S., what was it that made you think about this horse, that he could be a horse that would be a contender in this race?
Well, I think at the initial entry was probably just a pipe dream, really. Pat Cummings was the one that sort of originally said to me I should consider the Kentucky Derby if we think this horse is good enough to win the UAE Derby, which after winning his maiden and the trial there, I felt that he was good enough to win the UAE Derby, certainly. So, but I don't think it really sank in until he won the Derby very well in Dubai. I mean, had he just won it or a length or two, I certainly wouldn't be sitting here right now. But the manner in which he won it, just thought, maybe it isn't such a big a dream. We better just give it a go. You never know. At the end of the day, we'll know much more on Sunday morning.
It's open up for questions. Darren has a microphone. I have a microphone as well. So if you'll please give us a hands up if you would have a question for trainer Mike to Kock. Yeah, hang on, Bill.
Okay. Thank you, Darren. Michael, you said right off that you said that the horse had shipped over. You said he kept his coat. Is that what you were saying?
Yes.
Yeah, tell me about that and just physically about the horse. We were all back there this morning and saw him as a nice looking racehorse, but I wonder if you could just talk a little bit more about him like that.
Well, obviously coming out of Dubai now, it's probably 35, 36, 37 degrees Celsius. I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit, but it was pretty hot. And he's a horse that hates a blanket. We just keep the red lights in the boxes. He pulls his blanket off at night. So, and he was actually stabled outdoors right through the winter in Dubai because he used to suffer from respiratory infections. So when you get into that cold of Chicago at 1 or 2 degrees, it would be very easy for him to push out a long winter coat, which he didn't do. It's maintained, it's dapple, and he looks very good with it, despite being quite cold there and pulling his blanket off every second night. So it's a relief.
He seemed like an interesting kind of horse.
He is definitely. He's quite a character. He doesn't get too fazed by much. I mean, this morning it was his first morning out there. He didn't raise a sweat at all. He trotted around, took everything in. I decided to give him a canter as well, seeing that he had taken everything so well.
Hang on a second, Mike. So,
thank you, Darren. Michael, we had heard a few days before you shipped into Arlington that you were thinking about going to the Skylight Training Center.
Yes.
They have a synthetic track out there. Can you talk about your decision to come in and stay at Arlington to train up to this point?
I think it was based on the fact that he looked like he'd lost a bit of weight in the flight, according to my assistant Trevor. And to ship again 3 or 4 days later, or possibly even 2 days later, was, in my opinion, just going to be a mistake. So just thinking on our feet, we're quite comfortable at Arlington. There are not a lot of horses around there, so he wasn't getting too fizzed up or anything like that with a lot of other horses around him. He seemed to settle in very well for the 2 days there in quarantine. So, although it was very kind of them to offer training centre to us, we just felt there and then that we needed to change our game plan. And I think for the better. He's kept up his appetite and his bright demeanour.
Michael, two things. Was he in Amsterdam? Did he go from Dubai to Amsterdam
Dubai, Amsterdam for a few hours, and then obviously to Chicago.
to Chicago? Now, I know you have a military background. Did your family go back in the military in South Africa?
No, not at all. No, we, as you know, in South Africa in the early years, we were all conscripted.
Right.
We had to do 2 years in the military and then another 2 years camps where you spent 2 months of every year until you did a further 24 months.
So you spent, what, 4 years in the...
Just short of that, because by then apartheid was eased out, and thankfully I didn't have to spend another extra year doing camps.
Right, so 4 years...
Probably about 3 years.
About 3 years in the Army?
Yes,
Army there?
well, I did my 2 years initially in the equestrian centre with horses.
And what was the name of your boss, the trainer who died?
Ricky Howard Ginsberg. He died at 44 years old.
And you inherited his stable of about 50?
I took over his stable of about 50. I was 24 years old at the time. Probably a bit too young for it, but was thrust into it, and it started off very well initially, so just cracked on, and here we are.
Well, good for you.
As you evaluated coming here, how much does the size of the field enter into your thinking, both in terms of whether this is a good fit and strategically what you would ask your horse to do?
I suppose, if you look at his form, I don't think he's run with as many horses ever. So it's got to be a concern. He seems to handle the kickback very well and whatever's thrown at him. So I think mentally he should be fine with it. But again, I've watched a few reruns of Kentucky Derbies. There seems to be a definite pattern that develops very early. Within 400 meters, horses seem to be, they could be 20 and 30 meters spread, or 20, 30 lengths spread apart. I think the cream gets settled in the early part of the race very quickly, most of the time. I mean, there have been horses that have come from way back, but unexpectedly, I guess. But I think if he can deal with that first 400 to 600 meters of frenzy, he'll be all right.
You talk about having to think on your feet, and so many of the trainers who are familiar with the Derby kind of have their routines of bringing a contender in each time, and you're trying to do something that's pretty unique with your horse. So for you, what's the process like of decision making coming here? Can you just talk about your feelings of kind of having to do something pretty new to your stable and to your training career?
Well, I think the key thing is to remain open-minded. That's the way I train. I don't decide every single day that it's X, Y, or it's Z. I think horses really need to tell you in a way what they feeling on. You've got to adjust your plans just because you think that you need to breeze on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and your horse may not eat up well, he may not look right, and you may not just be happy with him looking at the track. I think you have to just keep thinking on your feet as a trainer. So the key thing is to be very open-minded. We're very open-minded about this trip. We're hoping to do it again in the future. The way we've done it this time may not work out. We may need to rethink that. But we'll at least have the beauty of hindsight.
Mike, your horse seems to be taking what appear to be a rather substantial class hike, kind of redoubled by the fact this is considered one of the most talented fields in quite a while.
Yeah.
What gives you the confidence that he can handle that on top of the ship and all the other adverse conditions?
Yeah, I know. I probably found the worst year ever to attempt to try and run in a Kentucky Derby. But as I said, the way he won in Dubai, I'm sure the jury's still out on the horses he beat, but he did it in a manner that gave one confidence that you could put the horse on the plane and hopefully he'll be competitive. As I said, if he had just won, I wouldn't have even bothered. But I mean, he was geared down to win, which was quite impressive. And Christoph Simeon got off and is a good judge, and I've worked with him for a while, and he just said we must take our chances. And I mean, okay, he's never won a Kentucky Derby either, or running one. The fact is that the horse must have given him some sort of feel. He's given us a bit of a feel, and you know, at the end of the day, this is just it's a sport. It's a wonderful sport. It's like any other sport. Unless horses take each on, or players or athletes from other countries, who's ever going to know who's the best and who's got the goods and who hasn't?
Mike, if my memory is correct, this is your 7th attempt at a major stakes race here in America.
Something like that, yeah.
Can you talk about, do you have aspirations to have a bigger presence in the States down the road?
I actually enjoy racing, yeah. I mean, I love the way we get looked after. I mean, especially here at Churchill. I mean, we've had some fantastic hospitality, and the chairman, Mr. Flannery, and Ben, and everybody involved. It's just, you know, I mean, it's a major event. They don't have to really pay you too much attention, but to be honest, it's been overwhelming. And sure, we'd like to. I have a base in Newmarket, and with a specific reason of travelling, and I think that you know, America is for us a good place to race. So some of the South African breds that I race abroad have done very well, yeah. Albeit some of them haven't won, but we've had some you know, good finishes, seconds and thirds in some major Group 1 races.
Can you talk a little bit about the stablemate that I believe is going to be entered in the Woodford Reserve Turf Classic?
Gio, yeah. He's probably, for me, short of a Group 1 class. We saw that in Dubai. He was beaten 5 or 6 lengths in a very strong Group 1 there in the duty free, but he's just behind that. So he's probably at Group 3, Group 2 level. I'm told it's not the strongest renewal, but you know, he's a horse that'll be competitive without being too confident about him. And the intention is to leave him in the States with a trainer here to carry on training him for us.
Could you talk a little about how you found the horse's running style, how that emerged, and also can you describe the owner and how this horse fits into the owner's stable?
Okay, it's all sheer luck, really, at the end of the day. He's a horse that was bought by a former bloodstock, a friend of mine, Jahan Malherbe. Sheikh Mohammed bin Khalifa loved Dubawi as a stallion, and we try to buy as many Dubawis as we can. As you know, there are not that many on sales. They tend to be bought up beforehand. And this horse and another one in particular were at Arcana in France. And Jahan bought him, and then we moved him to Ireland, to Fozzie Stack, who does a lot of our looking after our youngsters for us. He's a good mate of ours, and he broke him in, got him going there, and then when the team arrived in England, then the horse was taken across to England. We ran quite dismally, although fancied. He showed us some good work at home, and we thought he'd run well, and he didn't in England. I think he ran 4th and 5th or something like that. And I was in two minds. I thought to myself, well, maybe he's just not good enough for Dubai, and was in two minds. And at the end, at the death, I just thought, you know, what's the point in keeping him here for the winter? Let's try Dubai. Went there, he started exercising well on the dirt. There were no turf maidens, so we had to run him in a maiden at the end of the year with 3 and 4 year olds, and he's a 2-year-old, which is not ideal, because at weight for age you're under pressure. And he won that, and he won it very well, and sort of made us look up a bit, because I believe if any 2-year-old can beat 3 and 4 year olds at a weight for age deficit, I think you can't be that bad. And then just cracked on from there. So I think a lot of luck involved, and maybe lucky decisions, I guess. But I suppose that's the game, really. If you've got no luck, you've got nothing.
Hey, Mike, can you clear up the story with the horse's feed? There seems to be a lot of confusion as to what's actually going on there, as far as why he can't have his general nutritional diet that he.
Feed, did you say feed? The feed is, I mean, he was on a food that I formulated myself, brought in, I bring into Dubai, and I actually am part of selling commercially in South Africa. It's a brand called EPOL, Speed Max, but it's not registered in the USA. And there's another Aussie feed I was using there as well called Mubtaahij in Dubai, also not registered in Dubai. So FDA regulation didn't comply. It would have been too much regulation as well to, get it all done. I mean, all the red tape that can, yeah. So we had to make a change, and we changed to Bailey's, which I'm more than happy with. I think the horse, he's got a very good appetite, a bit like myself. He keeps his head in the manger, and he's done well with it.
If you could elaborate on your views about Lasix, not giving it to him, but just what are your general views about it, whether it works or not? I know I've read where you said you don't know that much about it, but what are your impressions?
Funny enough, there was a study done in South Africa through I think the American Jockey Club in conjunction with the South African Jockey Club, where they took a bunch of horses and they raced them. They gave them a bolus and they gave them Lasix. Obviously, it wasn't hard to work out who had the bolus and who had the Lasix after about 15 minutes. But then they raced the two together, 2 weeks apart. And the study came out in favourable for Lasix, and that Lasix actually does help bleeders. Now, the reason why I didn't use Lasix on this horse because he's not a bleeder. And he's never been given Lasix. And I have no idea how he will perform if he was given Lasix for the first time. And I wasn't prepared to take that chance. If he was a bleeder, I would have given him Lasix. But he's not.
Mike, how close have you come before to having a Derby entry, and what does it mean for you to finally be here?
I never come close, ever. This is about as close as I've ever got. I've always generally trained Southern Hemisphere horses, so they were never eligible. And of the 6 derbies I won in Dubai, 5 were with Southern Hemisphere horses, where they give them a £9 allowance. The Southern give Northern. And it can be quite often in the Southern Hemisphere's advantage, given if it's an early fall and you're dealing with a late fall. That's why I think sometimes the weight for age scale lets horses down, is that it presumes horses age on the 1st of January and the 1st of August. But obviously a lot of them age very differently. So I've never had the opportunity. And then we started buying Northern Hemisphere horses because of the movement restrictions out of South Africa. And this is one of the first horses from that crop of horses that we bought. We bought obviously in Ireland, England, as well as France, and he's one of about 6 of them that has come through. We've got another one that's stakes class as well, so it's a fairly high percentage. But again, with not even a thought of a Kentucky Derby in mind, it was all European pedigrees. And then along pops this horse out of nowhere. So just again, luck, being in the right place at the right time.
Mike, watching the Kentucky Derby from afar, what does the Derby mean to you? What are your thoughts watching it from afar?
Well, from afar, as a young man in this industry, you always thought, well, I'd love to go and race there one day, go and watch. The thought of actually having a runner, it wasn't really a thought. You just didn't think it could happen, You always thought, well, if I need to be buying horses in America, dirt horses, I'm never going to be able to race there with a South American horse. Not in your wildest dreams did you think that you would buy a European horse good enough to come across here and compete here. I mean, they probably breed in Europe? Between Europe and America, 60, 70, 80,000 foals. And you've got one of the 20 that are good enough to run. It's a satisfying feeling. But it is... I don't think there's a word big enough for it for me. To say it's huge or massive is, I think, still downplaying it.
Have you learned the words to my old Kentucky home?
No, I think I better. A few mint juleps might help.
Could you just also say the horse's name again? And
Mubtaahij.
So it sounds like a P almost.
Mub.
Yeah. And it means elated, but can you elaborate on that or anything? Or why was the horse?
To be honest with you, I couldn't really tell you. I mean, I think I'd be fluent in Arabic if I understood every horse that I trained's name.
If you would, describe the kind of trip you'd like to see your horse have Saturday.
Obviously, I don't want to get involved in any speed duels. I think there will be. Some people don't think it won't be that hectic, but I think there'll be enough speed, because the principal horses are fast horses. So if you want to beat them, you've probably got to. If you're fast yourself, you're probably going to get out there and take them on. I personally would like to see us 5 or 6 things off the speed, possibly a little deep, out of the kickback. Ride him for luck, ride him for the kick. Whatever happens, happens after that. I wouldn't want to put too much pressure on Christoph. I believe the man is an intelligent man. He's a flary jockey. And you don't want to take that away by tying them down to instructions.
When is Christoph due in town?
Wednesday. Yeah, he's got a lot of flair, like artistic flair. Yeah. Not fairy, flary. He wouldn't enjoy that. I know he's French. No, he's not. No, he's got a lot of flair.
Christoph, I understand, he's going to ride in the Guineas the next day. Is he flying out? That could make a pretty big weekend.
I think he's getting out that night, or it was, I don't know, whenever. But hopefully he'll be back for the Guineas as well, yeah.
Mike, are you going to do paddock schooling, gate schooling, any of those types of things over the next couple days?
Yes, he'll paddock school between races on Thursday. We might let him have a little look at the gates as well, Friday or so. I think it's probably important to do it between races just to take in a bit of the hype.
And he gets his shoes, he gets shod the day of the race?
Normally, but I might just shoe him a little earlier, because they're walking around on a lot of tarmac and stones before they get to the track, which he's not used to. But his feet are rock hard. He doesn't get too phased for it, but I don't want them to wear down, having to walk up and down the concrete and stones, yeah.
Any other questions for Mike? If not, Mike, well, thank you for being here. Wanted to introduce your wife, Diane, back here. If you'll just at least wave. She didn't want to get up next to him there, but we're thrilled to have you here and hope you have a great experience. It's been great to meet Mike de Kock today. And you've added something to my lexicon here. I think I heard you correctly in describing the early stage of the Derby as 400 meters of frenzy or something like that. I like that very much.
Looks like it from the outside, anyway.
But we appreciate you being here. Wish you the best of luck this week, and just all the best on Saturday. It's great to have you here and have Mubtaahij as part of the Derby 140. Oh, you got a late question, Dan.
No. Sheikh Mohammed's not going to be here. His right-hand man, Mohammed Khalil's going to be here.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks again to Mike de Kock, trainer of Mubtaahij, contender for Saturday's 141st Kentucky Derby.